As President Donald Trump expands the footprint of U.S. Special Operations,
no enemy stands a chance against our special forces.
how did Special Ops become so central to America's war on terror?
Can Special Ops keep up the pace?
It started decades ago,
The year of the hijack.
when someone yelled fire on a crowded plane.
Everybody turns around to look at what's happening there, and there are two people who each have a hand grenade in their hand and a gun.
Suddenly, we heard on the intercom a man speaking in English with a German accent who said that we've changed directions, but if we'll behave and follow instructions, nothing bad will happen to us.
At the end, he said, "Thank you for flying Air France," and, hung up.
The plane, heading from Tel Aviv to Paris, had been hijacked by a group of German radicals and members of a Palestinian liberation organization.
They want the freedom of 53 prisoners. If Israel and the other countries accept to release those prisoners, no harm will be done to us, they'll release us, and if not, it'll be different.
And he finished it with the words, "Now you know how the mind of a crazy German revolutionary works."
2,800 miles later, the plane touched down in Entebbe, Uganda, where the hostages were greeted by its leader, Idi Amin.
He says, "Look, these terrorists have full support of the Ugandan people." Now the building is surrounded with Ugandan soldiers armed with machine guns. So, I asked my father what's going to happen. He told me, we'll probably eat dead meat because Israel never negotiates. He even made the argument, it's way too far for Israel to intervene.
Soon, 47 hostages were released in an attempt to entice the Israeli government to the table. Olivier Kojo was among them.
C'était assez dangereux.
Vous avez quoi?
Des grenades et des boîtes d'explosifs.
Israeli intelligence, secretly planning an operation, was waiting for them.
They started asking me all kinds of questions like, how high is the grass out there? Can you see the lake from where you are? Which way do the doors open? Is it wall, window?
We never had to plan an operation which is so far away with so many soldiers. I was not afraid of being killed or being hurt. I was afraid of failure.
3 days later, lead pilot Joshua Shani guided a squadron of 4 Hercules C-130s through the darkness toward Entebbe Airport.
We landed normal landing, no big deal. In the middle of the runway, paratroopers jumped from the door. The job was to conquer the control tower. I made the turn, I saw the terminal, it was quiet. The Entebbe situation was based on surprise.
Out the back of the Israeli plane, heavily armed commandos quickly drove a convoy that included a Mercedes chosen to resemble Amin's.
It took seconds and they were inside the building.
Our soldiers were beginning to come in. Then I thought that there would be bullets flying and I covered myself with a mattress.
Within 51 minutes, the commandos had killed all the terrorists and Ugandan soldiers guarding the building. Then they rushed the 102 remaining hostages onto the awaiting planes.
After we were satisfied, my instruction was, take off, don't wait, go, go.
Four hostages were killed, as was the commandos' leader, Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu. But the world saw the bold operation as an extraordinary success.
Immediately you saw a trend. We're talking about real countries like the US, of course, UK, Germany, Italian, all came to learn. It was like the whole world said, wow, they have chutzpah, these guys. They are damn good. Entebbe gave a green light to governments that there is maybe another way and not just to surrender.
3 years later, the United States faced a similar challenge when the Islamic Revolution swept through Iran.
Look at this. One American, blindfolded, handcuffed. Today, in the courtyard of the American Embassy in Tehran, he and 60-some others, still held hostage, and threatened in a country gone out of control.
The Americans had been taken hostage, in part to force President Jimmy Carter to turn over Iran's former Shah, who had been given refuge in the United States.
Negotiations were not going well, and the Iranians were becoming increasingly militant in terms of threatening to kill hostages if they did not get their way with America.
In case the United States decide to do something like Entebbe airport, you must be sure that they will definitely be killed.
But an Entebbe-style rescue was just what the Carter administration was planning, using a new counter-terrorism unit called Delta Force.
Operation Eagle Claw attempted to project power and special operations forces deep into enemy hostile territory, but while it was sort of in the same spirit as Entebbe, there were a lot of moving parts for Operation Eagle Claw.
It was going to be complex and really, really high risk. But if the president was going to order us to go, then you salute smartly and you go.
To support Delta Force, the operation required 8 helicopters, massive cargo planes, 4 separate landings in hostile territory, and scores of troops from every branch of the military.
The only difference between this and the Alamo is Davy Crockett didn't have to fight his way in.
But planners hadn't accounted for the region's punishing dust storms, which crippled too many of the mission's helicopters when Delta Force touched down.
The plan all the way along was we needed to abort if we were not going to leave with at least 6 flyable helicopters. And now we're down to basically 5.
As they evacuated, disaster struck when a helicopter pilot lost control.
The chopper tilts over, the rotor blades slice into the forward cockpit of the EC-130 and the wing fuel tanks. A lot of noise, big crash, fire immediately breaks out.
Good evening. We tried, we failed, and we have paid a price.
Left behind in the desert of Iran are the bodies of 8 American servicemen, 7 U.S. aircraft, and many questions.
To the families of those who died and who were wounded, I want to express the admiration I feel for the courage of their loved ones and the sorrow that I feel personally for their sacrifice.
Where Entebbe had shown the world what special operations could accomplish, Eagle Claw became a costly lesson in failure.
Bad luck did play a part, the investigators said, but they added so did poor planning.
In response, the U.S. made sweeping changes over the next decade to how these operations were conducted, increasing their funding, beefing up the forces, and putting them under a central command.
In 1980, there were some 6,000 to 8,000 special operations people. Today's count is over 69,000. Unbelievable growth. Because of Eagle Claw, we find ourselves much better prepared today. Many things would not have happened without that failure.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
The entire operation, from the time the SEALs landed in the compound to when they finally took off with bin Laden's body, took only 38 minutes.
The bin Laden raid had very obvious tactical and strategic significance, just like the Entebbe raid did. You could see that the United States could project this sort of special operations, direct action mission, even into denied territory in ways that I think a lot of people had not anticipated.
Today, these missions are central to the war on terror.
North Korea now a priority for U.S. Special Operations Forces. In Somalia, in Yemen, in Libya, in Iraq, in Syria.
But that's created a new concern.
There's not enough of an overall strategy. The force has been stretched to the max.
There seems to be a temptation to view American Special Forces as a solution to just about all military problems without really calling it military action.
In order to keep his pledge to reduce the number of conventional troops on the ground, President Barack Obama increasingly relied on special operations to pick up the slack. Since taking office, President Trump has further expanded their role.
Special operations should not be the panacea for every kind of difficulty that we find ourselves around the world facing, to include terrorism. We should not get to the point that we become the solution for the United States military.